Hi, my name's Chuck Fall, and I'm the chief proponent of Green Liberty Caucus. We're building a bloc, and my guests tonight are Emanuel and John, and Gloria are the co-presenters in a theme dedicated to peace, building a world peace movement. And my remarks are going to be brief. I have posted at the Green Liberty Caucus .org website an article wherein I basically argue that a ceasefire in the Gaza-Israel conflict is not a sufficient thing for us to be saying, that we actually have to stake out a full-blown denunciation of the military-industrial complex, the plutocracy that sustains it, the plutocracy that uses the military to sustain its hegemonic interests. I've broken out a theory, and it's shared by many, that basically Israel is a client state, vassal state, however you want to frame it, of the NATO Atlantic Alliance, Anglo-American. And if we're going to get real peace in the world, we have to speak to the root causes. And that means we have to look at the long history of military conquest, the use of false flag events to trick we the people into accepting war as a way to resolve international problems. There's a long history starting from even the Mexican-American War of claiming something that wasn't true. And this continued through the 60s with Vietnam, and most recently, of course, 9/11, and now even the Israelis appear to have used the October 7th event as a cover to completely demonize and vilify the Hamas in order to rationalize a horrific bombardment of Gaza. So I'm going to pass the baton now to Gloria, and Gloria has a history in the Green Party. She has written a peace proposal. She has an article that she's collected on covert actions, and that's all at the greenlibertycaucus.org website, and people can get into the details there. But meanwhile, I'm going to step away, and Gloria is going to then pass the baton to John Spritzler, who will speak about egalitarian revolution and the importance of that as a strategy. And Emanuel will close out our presenters with a kind of wrap up around building a Green Liberty movement. We're building a Green Liberty PAC that would dedicate political contributions to building leadership to advance a movement that can speak to this emergency that we are in. Gloria, I'm going to pass it to you, and we're going to put the spotlight on the speakers so that they can be highlighted. And the spotlight is accessed through the participants button. And I think that worked there for you. So Gloria, please give us an introduction about the peace proposal you've introduced, give us some highlights, and speak to the emergency and what we ought to really be speaking to if we're going to build a peace movement that can make a difference. Chuck out.
Thank you, Chuck, for hosting us and bringing us all together. Green Rennaissance Sovereign Rights Movement works very closely with Green Liberty Caucus, and this is, I guess, one of those moments. I came to the Green Party after I was very disappointed in the Democratic Party. I guess I was suffering from some cognitive dissonance, believing that the Democratic Party or the Green Party could actually do anything. And what I found is a hornet's nest of controlled opposition. When I first entered the Green Party, I was, well, how come there's not a world peace platform? It's the Green Party, it's about environmentalism, it's about love and peace. What could that be? So I set out to create one, and I wrote a world peace platform for the Green Party, and I was hooked up with GPACs, which is the Green Peace Action Committee within the Green Party. And they liked my world peace platform very much. and they added things to it and took some things out and made it a much better document. And then they tried to get the Green Party of the US to adopt it as a platform plank. And it was completely dismissed, as was I. And the New York, where I'm from, refused to appoint me to GPACs, even though they requested that I be there. And I've been working with them for 2 years. And it just came out that, you know, Howie Hawkins and Gloria Matera were running, and that Howie Hawkins was in favor of sending weapons to Ukraine and all kinds of wars of he's been pushing. So it's really no surprise that anyone who really wants peace cannot have a role in the Green Party of the United States, GPUS. So I'd like to talk a little bit about a world peace platform, because, you know, nobody has one. And a lot of us here are still members of the Green Party because we believe that it has some infrastructure that's worth saving, although it is controlled opposition. And I don't think any one of us who has been part of the Green Party would say anything other than that. So what makes the world, the platform so important is, prior to GPACs and my involvement in creating this platform, which is one of the links on Chuck's thing, and I can also share screen. But there's two really key things that everyone should be focused on. And one is that a world peace is not just an absence of war. Okay, world peace first starts with truth, and then it starts with how do I say it starts with justice. You can't have justice without truth, and you can't have peace without truth and justice. So these things all build upon each other. And what we see repeatedly, and I'll speak for our whole panel because I think we really are uniform in this, is that there's this reluctance to speak truth. And two of the things that are very, very important is to understand controlled opposition, and to understand false flags, and to understand what covert warfare is, and what regime change wars are, and how they're done, and how the intelligence complex is as deadly, if not more deadly, than the military-industrial complex, because they work hand in hand. So a lot of controlled opposition peace groups will focus on ending the military-industrial complex, but they are routinely silent on ending the intelligence complex, which is, what is behind the Mujahideen. It's behind ISIS. It's behind Hamas. It's behind Al-Qaeda. If you check all of these groups, they were funded by the United States through usual cutout groups. So understanding that the United States has created, and John Spritzler talks a lot about these boogeyman concepts, where it's necessary to invent and develop and grow an enemy so that you have something to justify your reaction. It's like a bad Clint Eastwood movie. I mean, the entire world can be understood as a bad Clint Eastwood movie, where something happens and then the whole rest of the movie is about retribution and paying back for that event that happened. And usually it's a false flag. It's something that or it's I think Chuck worded it, it's a let it happen. And maybe other people would want to speak about that, where maybe you don't do it, like a lot of people consider 9/11 an inside job. That's a very common language. in, you know, and I found that a lot of people refuse to see the 9/11 as an inside job. They just see it as, you know, the official narrative, which if you really go into the details, it doesn't hold. So there's many of these. There's the Gulf of Tonkin. There's a tremendous amount. So it's very important for us to kind of understand truth being a foundational thing, and then justice being a foundational thing, and then peace is possible. You just can't jump to peace and say ceasefire, because that's a nothing word. It's a nothing burger. It means absolutely nothing. And it's the word ceasefire implies that you have two parties, and there's some kind of equivalency between these two parties, and that they just need to stop fighting, you know, like two 8-year-olds. You know, no, that's not what's going on. Especially in the situation between Israel and Gaza, you have a situation where you have all the firepower in the world, and very, very little firepower, and basically a lot of women, children, and elderly, and that's it. I mean, you know, that's the situation. So it's really, we don't really have a ceasefire. We have a resistance to oppression, and we have really extraordinary bombardment. And, you know, I'd like to say that, you know, you could kind of see, and one of the things that we really need to develop is really to lose our cognitive dissonance. And we all have it. I had it with, you know, many topics. You know, I mean, I was really shocked when I found out the United States funded the Iran and the Iraq war. It funded both sides, and it used Israel as the go-between. And Israel actually was selling weapons to Iran. At the same time, Iran was threatening to blow up Israel. And that was like a real wake-up moment for me. And I've never been the same since that moment. And I was like, well, wait, Iran is threatening to blow up Israel, and Israel at the same time is selling them weapons. And then it's the United States selling weapons to both sides. So there's so much that if you really just go into the details of it, you'll just be horrified. And you have to be kind of willing to be horrified, and willing to understand that everything that we thought was sacred and everything we thought was true is all a lie. And, you know, you can see it when you watch television. You see how the Russians are the bad guys, or the Asians are the bad guys, or, you know, this is all this conditioning. And it starts from childhood cartoons, such as, like, you know, Bullwinkle Moose, where you had, you know, these terrible characters, Boris and Natasha. So, you know, we have to really look at everything from an objective standpoint and see, does it hold water? Is what we see and what we hear the same thing we're being told, or is there a disconnect? And once we establish that disconnect, then we're at a point where we can start asking, what is the truth? And the truth should make sense. The truth should not be something that's incongruous. It should add up, you know. So you can usually find out if somebody is awake if you ask them about 9/11, if you ask them about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and you know, if they understand how these were done, then usually that person has the capacity to understand more modern things. So with that, I would say that, you know, peace is not the absence of war. It is a struggle to stay in truth, and a struggle to stay aware, even when being aware is painful, because the truth is not something easy. It's something necessary. It's good medicine. So, you know, I'd like to say that I have a couple of slides I could just kind of just go through if we have some time. I'm not sure if I'm over. Is someone counting the minutes here? Okay. Let me try to share screen. I'm not the greatest at sharing screen. Let's see if this can be done. And my mouse died. Okay, share screen. Let's try remove spotlight. Let's say share. Okay, I'm sharing the screen. And we're going to, I can't see it. Here we go. It's not good. Oh, I see this thing is in the wrong place. Okay, now we got it. Slides for Sunday. Okay, these were some slides that I had done for a covert warfare presentation that we made. And there's a video out there, and we had really great speakers, and they all talked about different aspects of covert warfare. And there's two things that are really important that we need to consider, and that is not just overt warfare, but sanctions. And, you know, when you find out that I think there's, you know, 3/4 of the world is sanctioned by the United States, and it's, you know, vassal states, you know, it's a big thing. So, you know, sanctions are very important, as well as these covert ops and it's covert warfare. And one of the presentations that we had done at Covert Action Magazine was covert warfare. What is it, who it hurts, and how to stop it. And, you know, we talked about some of the things that the various presidents had said. And, you know, it kind of goes into the tyranny that we're experiencing in the United States. Now, some people don't think we're in tyranny. Some people actually think we're in a democracy.
She did it all.
And that's quite, you know, a lot of cognitive dissonance there. You know, we're not a democracy at all. You know, we're an oligarchy at best, and a totalitarian oligarchy, if you really want to get down to it. So, you know, this is something said by James Madison in 1788. The accumulation of all powers, legislation, executive, and judiciary in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. And basically, we have tyranny. And there's no way around it. Okay, next slide, really quick. Dwight Eisenhower, he talks about the military-industrial complex. We should take nothing for granted and be alert and knowledgeable. Oh, this is a really good phrase for us. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Okay, so basically, in a nutshell, Dwight Eisenhower is saying, hey, the responsibility is on people to be educated. Now, one of the problems we have is that our people are not being educated because the CIA and the intelligence agencies have taken over the programming of the media. So there's a very small Overton window of what we're allowed to know and say and hear and speak about. And if we try to go outside that window, we are shadow banned, we are silenced, we are deplatformed. And, you know, that's the thing. So also the school system, and I'm sure many of us who've been through the school system can say that every generation, there's less and less information being presented. When I was in university, there was a very robust liberal arts program where we studied many different topics that really compelled us to think analytically and to question authority and to debate. What we're seeing now in the school system, and especially in the higher education, is people are channeled into a profession, and that's it. You become an accountant, or you become a attorney, you become an engineer, and that's it. There's really no room for understanding the functioning of our society and our roles in it. Everything is kind of geared towards this. So one of the ways that we could push back is really through education. And one of the things that Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement tries to do is to bring this level of education out. And we do rely on the work of Emanuel and John, and they've had really great leadership roles with Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement in helping us form our and also, I mean, it's a big Green Renaissance sovereign rights movement has many members, and really they all fortunately push us all into many directions that an individual might not go in. And you know, I've learned so many things that are actually uncomfortable to learn. And I think there's like not a point where we hit you know, like an end to growing. Oh, just because I'm 50, I'm not going to learn anymore. Or just because I'm 60, I'm not going to learn anymore. Or just because I'm 70, I'm not going to learn anymore. Or just because I'm 80, I'm not going to learn anymore. And the truth of the matter is that we should always be in the process of learning. And it's not pretty. But, you know, as I said, you know, you can find out where someone stands by asking very simple questions. Do you think Robert F. Kennedy was killed with one bullet? If somebody says yes, you know, you can't tell them about anything further. They're stopped right there. They stopped learning. They stopped their education. You know, if they say 9/11 was, you know, really done with a couple of guys who took flight sim lessons on Cessnas and were able to do hairpin turns on jumbo jets, you know, while there was a NORAD drill going on that was the exact same drill as the actual, you know, plot. You know, there's so many holes in the story. It's just not even funny. But, you know, if somebody says, yes, I believe that, then you go, okay, well, that's what I'm dealing with. You know, that's the level that I have to deal with. So, you know, we really have to look back before we look forward. And I think, which is why I'm bringing this, you know, to your attention, these screenshots, because these are former presidents. That we're talking 1961, we're talking 1788, you know, we're talking 1961 again, John F. Kennedy's speech. Let's see, where's a good spot? Yeah, there's a lot of really great things. The very word, this is a really nice one. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. Okay, we still don't have the full documents on the really the assassination of you know, John F. Kennedy. We still don't have that, or of Robert F. Kennedy. We don't have that information yet. So it's ridiculous. They didn't want to even release the Pfizer papers for what was it, like 50 years, and that was a huge fight. And this is a very interesting op-ed by Harry Truman. I'll just end on that. Let's see. For some time, I've been disturbed by the way the CIA has been diverted from its original assignment. It has become an operational and at times a policy-making arm of the government. This has led to trouble and may have compounded our difficulties in several explosive areas. I would therefore like to see the CIA be restored to its original assignment as an intelligence arm of the president, and that whatever else it can be properly performed in that special field, and that its operational duties be terminated or properly used elsewhere. So, I mean, having the president get information is one thing. Having intelligence set policy is something entirely different. And that's where we are right now. And when we say something like the intelligence agencies, you know, support the national interests, no, they don't. Okay, and that's really important. The intelligence agencies support the dictates of the predator class. They do not represent Americans such as myself, such as you. They represent a very, very small percentage, maybe 0.0000%, which is the predator class. So that I'd like to end on that and pass the baton to John. And thank you for listening. It's really an honor to be here with my friends, and I hope this video, goes far and wide and isn't silenced immediately. Okay, thank you. Let's see, how do we unshare screen? Stop share. Okay. And how do we take spotlight off? Dan? Spotlight on John.
If John starts speaking, should work.
Okay, so I will start speaking. So my name is John Spritzler. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I have a house guest named Emanuel, who is going to be speaking after me. So I'm not a former member of the Green Party. I have been advocating, writing about, agitating in favor of egalitarianism, egalitarian revolution. And I have spoken to literally thousands of random people on the streets of 5 different neighborhoods of Boston, in a very urban town in New Hampshire. A very rural town up in New Hampshire, where when I was there, Rush Limbaugh was still alive, and that's who most people listen to on the radio. I've gone to pro-Trump rally in 2016 in Boston, called by the Gun Owners Action League, at which the participants in the rally were mostly from western rural Massachusetts, in which there were hundreds of people, all white, almost all of them wearing the red MAGA Trump hat, most of them waving American flags. And so I've spoken to all of these kinds of people by showing them my button that says, "Let's remove the rich from power, have real, not fake democracy, with no rich and no poor." Here's a sticker with the same image that I give to people and so forth. And this is what I've discovered. At the Trump rally, I asked 50 random people who were busy listening to the speeches if they would mind turning around and let me ask them a question. I said, what do you think about what this says? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea? 86% of them said it was a good or a great idea. I offered them a button with the image. Every single one of them took the button, and many of them pinned it on their shirt right on the spot. It was a very, very hot summer day. A woman at the rally had brought bottles of cold water and insisted that I take a bottle from her because she appreciated the message that I was spreading. 86%, 43 out of the 50 random people were extremely positive about this essentially egalitarian revolutionary message. Let's remove the rich from power, have real, not fake democracy, with no rich and no poor. So when I tell liberals, progressives about my experience at the Trump rally, they often find it amazing. They would never have believed, they would never have dared to to ask such people what they thought about this egalitarian revolutionary idea. When I ask random people, and I've made videos, so my website, pdrboston.org, you can see the videos of me asking random people on the streets of Boston, what do you think about what this button says? Good idea or bad idea? 90% say it's a good or a great idea. People love this idea. The same thing up in a town called Unity, New Hampshire, where people were listening to Rush Limbaugh, but they love this idea. I collected signatures on a document that expressed this idea, and they were asking, where do I sign? Up in Unity, New Hampshire, rural New Hampshire, conservative New Hampshire. So, and Boston, by the way, is a liberal town. The Boston Globe is one of the most liberal newspapers in the country. So people get nothing but liberal propaganda in the Boston mainstream. That's where NPR is, the big radio station. That's liberal. And in Boston, like 90% of the people love this egalitarian revolutionary idea. So here's my point. This egalitarian revolutionary idea is an extremely unifying idea. It unifies because it expresses the most important views that the vast majority of ordinary Americans already have. It's not a question of how do we persuade people to change their mind and agree with this egalitarian revolutionary goal. No, that's not the problem at all. They already agree with it. Here's what the problem is. The problem is that all of these people who love what this button says, they don't know that in loving the egalitarian revolutionary goal, they are part of the vast majority. They have no clue of that. The people at the Trump rally had no way of knowing that most of them agreed with this button. The people who lead things like the Trump rally never talk about the egalitarian revolutionary goal. They talk about things like, the Second Amendment, unify people around that idea, but never about the egalitarian, let's remove the rich from power, of real, not fake democracy with no rich and no poor. They never talk about that idea. So people have no way of knowing they're in a majority in supporting it. And that's true for basically the vast majority of people in the United States have no clue that they're in the vast majority in supporting this goal. As a result of which, the idea of achieving the goal seems to them impossible. They think that only a minuscule number of people, themselves and maybe a friend, would support a movement for that goal, and so doesn't make sense to even talk about trying to win it. And this is why there is extreme hopelessness about actually making society be the way most people already want it to be. There's extreme hopelessness about it. So you have a situation like, for instance, I went to a rally a number of years ago for people who are supporting the $15 an hour minimum wage. And it was a big rally at downtown Boston. And there was, like a rally, there was a lot of people gathered in front of a McDonald's restaurant listening to people giving speeches of why we should have $15 an hour minimum wage. So I went around like I did at the Trump rally, asking people to sign this egalitarian declaration called This I Believe, which says what the button does, but spells it out a little bit more. And everybody signed it. They loved it. But the people giving the speeches at this rally never even hinted at wanting to remove the rich from power, to have real, not fake democracy with no rich and no poor. All they talked about was $15 minimum wage. And the reason that they never hinted at the goal that virtually everybody in their audience wanted and would love to win is to give the kindest explanation, is that they believed wrongly that if the movement for the $15 minimum wage talked about what the revolutionary egalitarian goal that most people actually wanted, they believed that if it talked about that revolutionary goal, that it would lose support from the general public, and therefore they should not talk about it, because that would scare the general public away from supporting the reform goal of $15 minimum wage. Well, I have a video of myself talking to random people in the streets of Boston, where I asked them specifically if an organization that was fighting for a reform that you supported, like $15 minimum wage, if that organization also said that it was for removing the rich from power, to have real, not fake democracy with no rich and no poor, would you, I asked them, support that organization more or less if it said openly that it was for this revolutionary goal? And they all said they'd support it more. They would support an organization more if it did that, with one exception. One woman said less, and I got into a conversation with her. I was curious, why did you say that? And she said, well, I wouldn't trust that they really meant it. She said, I would think they were just saying that to get support, but that they didn't really mean that they wanted to fight for it. So you get my point, that we need to solve the problem that people feel hopeless about fighting for what they really want, because they think that nobody else agrees with them about it. So they have to limit what they say they want to some minor reform, a Band-Aid reform, instead of something that really solves the fundamental problem of our society, which I refer to it as class inequality, some rich and some poor, where rich people treat the have-nots like dirt. So in my opinion, one of the main strategies that we need to pursue with all the tactics that we can come up with is the strategy aimed at enabling people to know the truth about us, the have-nots, that in wanting the egalitarian revolutionary aim, we are in the vast majority, and we should therefore have the confidence to start acting like the vast majority, instead of today acting as if we were a tiny, hopelessly weak minority with respect to that revolutionary goal. And if we want to build a movement that really ends up gaining the enthusiastic support of not just thousands of people, but hundreds of millions of Americans, and likewise in other countries, we need to make the revolutionary goal explicit. We need to let people know that we really mean it, that we're serious. We need to figure out how to let people learn that they are in the vast majority in wanting that goal. One of my sons, in the context of talking about building a movement, said very wisely, He said, Dad, people don't get on a bus if they don't know where it's going. And they certainly don't get on a bus if it's going somewhere where they don't want to go. So that's true. And that's why the goal is so important, that we spell it out explicitly, discuss about it in ways that elucidate how it's practical, how it's good, how it's much better, and how it's not foolhardy. It's not like wanting to abolish the law of gravity and so forth. And to give people the confidence that it's a goal that they are joined with by millions of other people in wanting to fight for. And when people know that, they will do things that, without knowing it, would seem crazy. They would make sacrifices of time and energy. They will do things that risk their career and so forth to fight for a goal if they know that they're joined by millions of other people in fighting for it. So that's what building a movement is all about. In Spain, in 1936 to 1939, the anarchists led successfully in about half of Spain what I would call an egalitarian revolution. They called it anarchism, but it did what I've been talking about. Many towns, they abolished the use of money. They had the economy be like the egalitarian idea, from each according to reasonable ability, to each according to need or reasonable desire, with scarce things equitably rationed according to need. That's the economy principle that makes it possible to have no rich and no poor, for people to support each other with mutual aid, which is an egalitarian value. Well, they did it in about half of Spain, and it worked economically. They outproduced the capitalist economy that they replaced. But how did they do it? How did they make this revolution? One of the most important factors was that for about 3 decades prior to 1939, the anarchists promoted a vast discussion about what the goal was. And people in Spain talked about this goal. They called it, with capital T and capital I, the idea. And even illiterate peasants were having anarchist literature read to them by people like Kropotkin, Peter Kropotkin, who articulated this egalitarian goal as an anarchist. And it took about 3 decades for this idea to spread, to become part of the culture of workers in the cities and peasants in the countryside. And so when the opportunity arose in 1936, for a variety of historical reasons, having to do with the fascist Franco trying to overthrow the liberal capitalist government in Spain, when the opportunity arose, it was possible to really make a fundamental social revolution, because there was such widespread understanding about what the goal was. And so on that note, I'll end by saying that I think that we need to do things to let people know that they're not alone in wanting this goal. And if we succeed in that, I think we'll end up making a revolution and succeeding. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Gloria, for identifying first what the nature of the crisis is in terms of governance and understanding and information. And John spelling out, I think, a critical element, which is, well, two. One is the need for revolution, that it can't simply be a progressive, conservative dialectic, but it needs that third branch, the revolutionary change. And it needs an egalitarian goal and other goals that we can steer towards. I'm reminded of, well, anyway, And so I'll just make a few remarks and then open up for discussion, which is ultimately our goal as a deliberative democracy. So just 2 points. First is the threat that we face from within, from what you might say the what seem like open-minded progressive forces who engage in this very limited hangout analysis. And this is something Gloria touched upon, but we really have this rhetoric, and we saw this in the Green Party, of saying we're in danger of some sort of fascist government if we don't elect enough progressive Democrats, or if we don't have the Green Party getting a lot of money from us. But this is, of course, a total deception. The United States is already 70 to 80% occupied by corporate fascist forces. They control the media, they control the discussion, they control universities, they control schools. There's resistance, but we're not going to make much progress until we recognize where we are. So on the one hand, we need to know where the bus is going. And the second thing is we have to know where we're going from, where we are. And then I guess the corollary to that would be the discourse of bad apples, which is sort of the Bernie Sanders favorite, or even Cornel West, to say that we have some bad apples, Trump being the most prominent of them. And if we could only replace them with some other people who are more decent, then all the problems would disappear, without and not addressing the question of how a consumption society, a consumption economy, the overproduction, unregulated global finance, the uncontrolled creation of money by banking cartels, how these things are distorting the nature of our society and creating wars and conflicts, that we have to have a fundamental structural change, not merely get rid of a few bad apples. And then 3, that only a revolution can address this, to go beyond this positive, this progressive, conservative dialectic, and to extend it to a progressive, conservative, revolutionary one, in which we have those like ourselves who are calling for fundamental change. And that, of course, in the United States, in the 1930s, many of the things that were advocated later by Democrats came out of the Communist Party of the United States, which was the first to advocate for civil rights, stood up for workers' rights and all sorts of things. Not that the Communist Party was entirely correct, but in the 1930s, you had this sort of this 3-part tripartite, right? Conservative, progressive, and revolutionary. And that was productive. And once you lost the revolutionary from the 50s, then we went into a downward spiral. And so we need to get away from what I might call conspiracy pornography, telling how you can name Masons or Zionists, and get into the concretes of both who owns what, how they control it, and also what we're going to do, how we're going to seize their assets, arrest them, and change things, and have a plan for how that's going to take place. And that means, of course, addressing how the stock market, derivatives, Federal Reserve fraud makes this possible. And of course, intelligence, which is now part of that, as Gloria mentioned. And the second half, to sum up briefly, looking forward for Green Liberty, Green Renaissance, is what we're going to do. And I hope the next stage will be that we're all going to be organized, that we will pledge to support each other, whatever it may be, to be as brothers and sisters, like a family together, that we will organize and take actions, short-term and long-term, establish a workable and meaningful chain of command and assign responsibilities. And that I think we really need to, in light of the current crisis, think about a serious, as I think Martin Luther King once said, we don't need to be, we should not be a military, but we should be at least as organized and at least as brave in in our effort to fight for peace as those who fight for war are. And I really do believe that. And the bottom line for that, in terms of the long-term concrete aspects, is independence or liberation. Depends, they're different words, but to say, in terms of first, self-awareness, I am I, this is who we are, this is where we stand. We can create from ourselves an ideological perspective, an understanding of how the economy works, how society works, create our own education, which is not undermined or created for us by multinational corporations, produce our own food, healthy food in our neighborhoods, produce the tools that we need, share our economy, share whether it's cars or lawnmowers or whatever we need, so we don't have to duplicate everything, and set up mutual support systems which will allow us to be independent. And this is very important because the trick, the ultimate sort of sleight of hand in the post-war liberal tradition, the liberal Democrats, is that government support is a way of inducing dependency on government, which in many cases, government is in fact corporations who have their faces, who are wearing masks. And I'll just close in saying that that's, I think, one of the really critical issues for us. We have this false dichotomy that we're fed, especially conservatives, but also all around, which is there's the government, and then because the government is failing, which it is, there's an alternative, which is the private sector. And well, this is true for liberals also, or progressives who take money from the private sector through various foundations. But in fact, the opposition of government and private sector is a total fraud, because the private sector, i.e. multinational banks and multinational corporations, is a form of government. It's the same as government. It's run like government, except it's more oppressive, more opaque, and less accountable. So we really have to understand that the opposition is between government, which has to be controlled, and local, independent, self-sufficient communities, which represent the people. So I'll stop there. And would Dan be willing to moderate or
I'm back.
People?
I could. So
Okay, so anyone?
Okay, hold on a sec. I'll be right back. Dan, would you take the lead and just let's wrap this up. We could end the recording and then have some Q&A. We could do some Q&A and then end the recording. Dan, I'm going to pitch the ball to you, and I'm going to have you use your excellent judgment. And I know people are on some schedules here for travel reasons. So Dan, go ahead and moderate and bring this business to some conclusion.
How about if we let anyone form a stack and raise their hand and get to talk for 1 minute? Go ahead.
I just wanted to, am I unmuted? Yeah. I just wanted to comment a little bit on what Emanuel said, and I want to put this other word out there that I'm sure everyone on this panel agrees with, the concept of social engineering and how dangerous it is. And I just wanted to support that. And social engineering is this isolation of the individual. We are stronger as a couple. We are stronger as a family. We are stronger as an extended family. We are stronger as a community. We are stronger as a neighborhood. We are stronger as a culture. We are stronger as a united people. And what the predator class wants is to isolate the target. And if there's anything that I could really get across, is how dangerous it is for the isolation of the target, where you take a person and they no longer have a relationship. Now there's the feminists against the men. There's the trans against the heterosexuals. There's the Democrats against the Republicans. There's the nuclear family. I mean, the whole concept of the nuclear family is such a psyop. It's such
Okay.
social engineering. We don't have the extended family. It's such a loss. So I just wanted to put that out there as a very important
Okay.
concept for everyone to focus on. Thank you.
Okay. John's next, and then Bill Zwicker.
Okay, very good, folks. I'm thinking here, how can we expand our influence? And what I've come up with is that, see, these kind of seminars are mostly to a dozen or 2 dozen, maybe 3 dozen of ourselves, people that are already on board with this. How do we reach further? Well, I'm going to suggest that we do videos of maybe 10 to 15 minutes on these various topics. Each of us has sort of specialty areas. Emanuel has some, Gloria has some, I've got some, Chuck does, all of us really, and certainly John Spritzler with his egalitarian idea, which can take off. So if we get to do these videos and put them out systematically, not all at once, but one at a time, through Green Rennaissance, maybe through Rumble or whatever is the appropriate technology. And instead of having 15 or 18 or 20 people see these kind of programs, we get maybe thousands of people. So I'm going to throw that out for discussion as to how we can exponentially grow our influence by putting these good ideas out to a bigger audience. Okay, take it from there.
Looks like Bill. Only hand up.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. You know, the wealthy, the elite, they don't run as politicians. They hide behind politicians that they fund. So it doesn't look to most of the people like they're actually running the country, but they really are. So we need to change the way I think money works in our system. And the thing about the money system that we have, it's based on the idea of interest on capital. And that's the thing that drives this unending growth idea, that we have to have growth all the time. So I think it'd be a great idea to create small bubble economies like Gloria mentioned, getting a group of people that have enough trust with each other to reconceive the idea of money and take away the concept of interest and have more of a gifting and a flow, a local flow system where people give and take as they need. That's
okay. I think I'm on the stack, actually. I'm just going to take maybe.
I just want to say that's really John Spritzer's ideas. That's not mine. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm more on the COVID warfare and sanctions section.
Gloria, you mentioned social engineering, and as regards the current event of the Gaza war, I don't watch football much, but I watched the Ducks play last Saturday, and they're running commercials about the supposed rise of anti-Semitism in the United States, and this is getting rolled out in a massive scale. Of course, it's going to be used to suppress and cancel people, and it's been going. There's infiltrators within the Oregon Greens that have been playing this over and over and over again for years on end, and it is still going on. And it depresses me, but I've learned that just not to be afraid of it. Because the effect of it is just to instill cowardice, to scare people away of doing anything, away from doing anything. And I know if you do that, it just gets worse the next time. So you just have to nip it in the bud. That's all I got to say.
To that, I just like to say that resistance is love. Resistance is what we're doing right now. Resistance is community. Resistance is relationships. Resistance is family. Resistance is love. That's the most fundamental thing that we can do. Thank you.
You still want to talk, Emmanuel? I saw your hand.
Oh, well, I just want to say, well, I agree. Gloria said partially what I was going to say, but I guess I feel very strongly that in order to create something, so the Democratic Party and Republican Party, or for that matter, the Green Party, are functional organizations. They have a clientele, which are multinational corporations and extremely wealthy people. They give money to these parties, and they get at least as much back as what they give. But the Green Party or these other, progressive, even revolutionary organizations, it's not the same. You give the money to progressive Democrats or Green Party people because you think they're going to pursue your ideals in policy at some future date. This is a really crummy deal, right? The way to get working class people to give money to Green Party or Green Renaissance or Green Liberty is if they get something back immediately, if they immediately are part of some organization. And I really think that's what we have to think about, is that if someone gives, $20 to Green Renaissance or Green Liberty, that we're going to help them, right? They can talk to us, we'll help them, and we'll organize them to be self-sufficient communities. And that's really the only way we can fight this. And John was talking about what is Spain and what had been done, in France as well and elsewhere. That's how it worked. It was organizing communities.
Okay, no
I have
active
to-
stack. Go ahead.
In terms of Spain, what I've gathered from reading, Franco was about ready. The fascist General Franco was about ready with his military forces to overthrow the recently elected, very liberal capitalist government in Madrid for the national government of Spain. And the anarchists in Barcelona had an uprising where they were able to get enough guns from local police and sports stores, and they defeated the fascist forces that were in barracks in Barcelona. And the anarchists were now the only real force in Barcelona and in the province of Catalonia. And they organized a militia to prevent Franco's military from attacking them and from overthrowing the government in Madrid. And in the course of the anarchist militias fighting against Franco's forces, in about half of Spain, the rich landowners, and in the cities, the capitalist owners, fled. They fled to join up with Franco. And so in about half of Spain, the former ruling elite was gone. And that's how they made this fundamental social revolution. The people who normally would have crushed it had fled, intending, of course, to come back and overthrow it, which actually they did 3 years later. But for those 3 years, people were free to do what they wanted to do. So in terms of the United States, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if the rich are going to flee for any particular reason. When we decide that we want to make society be the way we want it to be, well, we can't just ignore that there are rich people who want to prevent us from being able to do it. And we have to grapple with that problem. And I'm just pointing that out, that we have to deal with the reality that there are, counter-revolutionary forces with, police and military that may or may not obey orders. That's a big question. But we can't ignore that. That's my main point. We have to grapple with it.
All right, at this point, whoever wants to talk, just talk freely. And anyone who can't get a word in edgewise, you can create a stack and I'll just keep watching for it.
Excellent.
This will go down in history as a moment when a bunch of revolutionaries were tongue-tied.
No, it's good to have silence. It encourages people to talk.
So
Hey,
now,
let me just jump in and just
Mhm.
I'll just
Chuck, how you doing? How's the family? Everything?
my mother just died. That's what happened.
My condolences.
I'm telling you on recorded TV that it's very
So sorry.
yep. I mean, she was sick. I mean, she
I
had
have to say, when Chuck says he has a family emergency, he's got one. There's no exaggeration here.
none whatsoever. So I'm at a
Wow.
loss. I'm not
I'm so
going to
sorry.
be worth much tonight. Yeah. But I'm glad that at least we started a conversation here that we can keep the ball rolling and stay engaged and develop focus. And that's
Well,
what
we're all here with you, Chuck, and anything you need.
I appreciate that. And I know, Emanuel, you've had family conversations on this trip as well. So
About my mother, yes.
That's the beauty of community and supporting
Mhm.
each other. And this is how we fight back. We fight back by loving each other and helping each other.
I appreciate that very much.
And we're with you, Chuck, and I'm so sorry.
Yep. Al. So I'm gonna let you guys. I'm gonna let Dan decide this when to end the recording, and you guys can keep chatting, and I'll be catching up. I'll probably watch the video
Right.
and
Thank
we'll
you.
get this posted. All right. You guys take care.
Thanks, Chuck.
And
Thank you.
condolences,
And a
Chuck.
big aloha to you and your family.
Peace.
Yep, terrible news. I'm sorry to hear.
Mm.
If some of the other people who haven't spoken would like to say something,
Yep, go ahead. Feel free. There's nothing formal going
Mhm.
on here. Anyone that feels like they're
Join the
not going to
party.
talk, just butt in.
I'm just going to say good night. Thanks, and look forward to the next.
thank you.
Yep, see you, Bill. Let me look back and see if any of you said anything I want to respond to.
Mm. Mm.
Well, it maybe, Dan, in light of what Chuck said, it would probably be good to wrap it up, since we should just keep him in our minds and as a family.
Okay, up to y'all. Anyone object to that? I guess if you do, just stay on the call. But
Okay, I'll
thank you
leave
all
that.
for joining.
Thank you.
And have a good
Mhm.
night.
Thank
See
you.
next time.
Good night. Good night.
Bye, thank you.
I should probably actually end the meeting for everybody, since I don't know if Chuck would want me to leave everyone on it. Oh, yes, and I need to hold on. I need to stop the recording.